Welcome back to the Kiran Rise Show. I hope you guys have been well. I hope you guys have been keeping safe. ਵੈਸੇ ਤਾਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਲੋਕੀ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਤੁਰਨ ਫਿਰਨ ਨੂੰ ਪਰ ਲੋਕਡਾਊਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਸਿਹਤ ਵੀ ਦੀ ਧਿਆਨ ਰੱਖੀ ਤੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੀ. So I hope you've been keeping well and keeping safe and following government guidelines. ਪਰ ਵੈਸੇ ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਨਾ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੈ. ਅਸੀਂ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਹਫਤੇ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀਗੀ ਕਿ bullying and why we were at the start what our turban means to us. ਅਸੀਂ ਪਟਕਾ ਕਿਉਂ ਬੰਨੀ ਦਾ ਆ ਅਸੀਂ ਨਾ ਦਸਤਾਰ ਕਿਉਂ ਪਾਈ ਦੀ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਨਾ ਪੱਗ ਕਿਉਂ ਬੰਨੀ ਦੀ ਆ. So we were talking about that, and of course, talking the effects of having a dastar or wearing a padka, and talking about bullying. So, Aj Asi, we're gonna talk, dig a bit deeper down to it, and I hope you guys can actually find something that's gonna you can take away from it and some inspiration about it. Whether you are a parent, whether you are a child watching this, I hope this inspires you one way or another to be actually strong for who you actually are. Because no one deserves any bullying across the world because we are all human. And I see sub rab de bande, like I said in my last show. So today I am really, really excited. I've actually got the chance again to actually speak to Suki, Jesse, and GURPS. Thank you so much for coming back, guys. Welcome back to the show. How are you guys? You guys okay?
Thank you.
Blessed.
We're great.
Always study Kala.
Good. So we were talking about ਆਪਾਂ ਪਿਛਲੀ week ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਆ ਕਿ about the star. It's important for us, and for Sikhs it represents as a crown. And ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਪਾਉਂਦੇ ਆ, we should feel proud about it. Jesse, you touched base about your experience growing up, that you had to cut your hair growing up because you saw a lot, you had to face a lot. And of course, Suki, you've touched base on your father and of course on your nephew, which your nephew is quite inspiring. I wish we had him on the show today, but he's quite inspiring. And Gerps, you spoke about of course the way you've been brought up and your father figure who actually had to face quite a lot. Now today we want to dig a bit deeper and talk about how is it more of is it frustrating for we know what it's like in the UK to when we're trying to tie a turban. Is it more frustrating for you guys? Is the culture difference very different to the UK? Is that when is the community less and a less of an understanding over there, that when you walk out with a bug or the star, people don't understand what that really is?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is that I had to grow up with a microscope. Everywhere that we go, we had to watch what we say and how we conducted ourselves in the community, and we had to grow up very quickly. I mean, just so that we can, in the face of adversity, we know how to handle ourselves and knowing how to diffuse situations. So when uh, because we're under a microscope, it it's very difficult in that end because you have to always watch what you say and watch what you do because it could potentially set anybody off, and there could be repercussions just for the most minor things. So even if you're not doing anything, like just walking in Walmart, this is going back just a year ago or 2 years ago for me. I was with one of my friends and we just walked in a Walmart and we were being followed by an elderly gentleman for about a good 10-15 minutes. He was going parallel into every single aisle and watching what we were doing, and then came up to me and asked me if I'm staying out of trouble. When I was in a crowded campus just a couple weeks prior, I had a female shout kaboom in my face. I'd been pulled over by police for having my blinker on not long enough. So it's not that I was speeding. It was not because I incorrectly changed lanes. It was because I didn't have my blinker on for long enough. So these things happen quite often. Unfortunately, you know, it comes with having a dastar, but how we conduct ourselves in the community, we don't have as much slack as other communities. We are held at a very higher standard than most, which is which is fine, uh, because it teaches us more humility, it teaches us more discipline very early on. So when we have adversity in any other respect, not just racism or bullying, I mean, I feel like it's made us tougher people, and we're able to, push forward.
And is the communities across so in across the UK, Suki, we know this, don't we? That in the UK we have communities, whether it's in Leicester, Birmingham, London, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਹਰ ਪਾਸੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਹਨਾ? And we know the community, the culture is very different here compared to anywhere else. But a question for you guys that are in the USA, how are the communities like? Is it quite a small communities or are they quite big? I mean, what's it like over there?
So I think the only big Indian community, I'm sorry, Sikh community, I should say, that we have here, I can't think of any big ones in the States other than like California has like big cities. So it's not really communities, it's just like areas of like a state or like a city where you'll have like Punjabis and Sikhs spread out. And then, but if you go to Canada, you go to Brampton, you go to Surrey, those are basically communities. You got signs, McDonald's signs, random signs up in Punjabi, street signs in Punjabi. But in the States, like it's very rare for you to find actual community where it would be like, okay, you can go there and you can find almost anything you need, or you're gonna see six, Punjabis walking around more. It's very rare. It's random cities around, like I said. But
Yeah.
I feel like we're starting to build our communities as people are starting to come into bigger cities. um but
Mm.
it is quite spread out. It's not like how I've seen in UK, where there actually is communities. There's like the parks, and it's like the babbe sitting around. That's in Canada, it's like that, but in the States it's not like that. It's all spread out. So
I
you
I, I think it's
Mm.
because of how established it's back because of how established that the UK has been and the influence that they had on India. So like for Vancouver, that was like Vancouver in Canada was one of the first uh, cities in the country and in the as well as in North America to have Sikhs back in like 1880s. That was like one of the first populations of Sikhs to come over to Canada. And then slowly, once travel was a lot easier, then Sikhs started to come through for immigration and try to come for a better life than in India. So like my grandfather went from the Pind in Ludhiana and then went to England back in like the 50s. And then from there, he came to America and went to first California to like the Fresno area. But to Jesse's point, I would confirm that, yeah, we have micro communities spread out throughout the major cities, but you don't see it as much because of how vast the country is. In Canada,
Mm.
you have the the third official language, I think, of Canada, I think is Punjabi. So it's like it's very strong concentrated, just because of the population. There's 70 70 or 37 million people in Canada versus the 370 million in the US. But the community is starting to grow. You can see pockets like in Detroit area. Chicago has
Mm.
a micro that's been since like the 70s and 60s.
Mm.
Yuba City is probably the crown jewel for the US. That's where you have the big nugget kitten that people come from all over the country for. Um, but that I think slowly but surely, those communities are going to be becoming more strong and close knit. At least that's the hope.
I think that's quite amazing to actually know, ਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਮਰਜੀ ਆ, for everyone that's watching, ਆਪਾਂ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਮਰਜੀ ਆ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਪੰਜਾਬ, ਹਰ ਪਾਸੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਵਸਦਾ ਆ, and we can even just touch a tiny little bit on, like for example, the farmers protest. ਜੇ ਖੇਤੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦੇ, going back to what Gerps just said, the families and ਜੇ ਸਿਆਣੇ ਆ, ਉਹ ਆਏ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ, they've come across from India all the way, to the UK or to America, sorry, wherever they've gone, just to have a better life, so that we can grow up, as we're kids and we're growing up, and our generations are growing up, and we can have a better life. ਉਹ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਇਦਾਂ ਹੋਇਆ ਸੀਗਾ, ਉਹ ਖੇਤੀ ਕਰ ਕਰਕੇ ਪੈਸੇ ਜਮਾ ਕਰ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਕਰਕੇ ਖੇਤੀ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹ ਇੱਥੇ ਆਏ ਸੀਗੇ, and to have that's quite big and that's quite important. But it's actually amazing to know that there is communities building even across the USA, even if they're small, ਪਰ ਇੱਕ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਜਣਾ ਸਟਾਰਟ ਹੁੰਦਾ, ਫਿਰ ਹੌਲੀ-ਹੌਲੀ ਉਹ ਵੱਡਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ। Now, we're talking about bullying, and Sukhi, one of the things that I wanted to ask, when ਆਪਾਂ ਜਦੋਂ we look at bullying, do you think, what is bullying? What is the definition of it, and how has it is there been any changes from when you was your dad compared to now, Sean's age? Is there any difference in between the two? And how do we define bullying in nowadays, in now terms?
I think back in our parents' day, it was a lot worse. The UK was, such a horrible place to live, and I think my parents were telling me some of the, they called them the skinheads back then. How they used to attack any skinned person. Me myself in school, I didn't face bullying, but I went to a school where there was Muslim girls that used to wear, their headscarves, and they used to have them pulled off. They used to be spat at. Any coloured boys, they used to just be jumped whilst they were walking into a lesson for no reason other than the fact that they looked different because of the colour of their skin. However, now I feel like because we live in this social media world, it's different in a way that, Shan is always on YouTube, always using the internet, and it worries me that he's going to be bullied on social media. So it may be something that we can't necessarily see if it's not in the classroom. Before we could say you could leave the bullying happening in the classroom, as soon as you're at home you're okay, but now because they're connected to these devices, those bullies can still torment them with those comments and stuff. So you need to be careful and make sure that you are watching what your children are accessing online, and what if they're chatting with any of the services, just to make sure that they aren't being bullied over social media. But also have those conversations with your children so they know what bullying is and it's not right. So if they if they make a passing comment that such and such a person said this to me, or they pulled my butt out, or did this to me, I want Sean to be comfortable enough to tell that to us and not feel embarrassed, like he should not be, upset about it. Because, like some Vijay saying, that poem that he wrote, it was absolutely heartbreaking to say what was happening. One day he says they were taking my dinner money. The next day they were saying names. Then there was blood pouring from his, head. The last day he said he couldn't take it no more. And for a child to be going through those emotions and not being able to speak to their family and their parents. Do you know what I mean? I've said to Sean, even if you can't speak to your mum and dad, if there's anything that bothers you, come and speak to me. Like, tell me if there's anything happening. And, not necessarily, back in the day, my brother was like, yeah, if someone says anything to you, you punch them, you do this, you stick up for yourself. I was like, you know what, if he's not someone that can punch back or hit or fight, because you're kind of telling him to bully that child. I goes, you need to explain to him, this is wrong. You go to your teacher. If your teacher doesn't do anything, then you can tell us, and we will take that step further. And whether we have to speak to your teachers and stuff, but have those conversations and just make sure they're not, like I said, on social media, they're not being bullied through what they're using. And another thing is that when we see Sikhs represented in the right way, so say for example, how many years has it taken for them to have a Sikh family on EastEnders, Kiran? Like, now that when we see it, people feel proud that do you know what I mean? We've got, Jagmeet Singh, we've got Tandesi, the first British Sikh MP with a turban in Houses of Parliament. When we see that, we feel proud. And I want Sean, when he watches these programs on YouTube and stuff, I want him to see people there wearing the stars, having a gutti and representing him, because he watches this stuff and he's like, well, why is there nobody like me on there? When he sees this program, why can't I be? So he's really adamant that he wants to do this because he wants to be the first person with a gutti to have his own YouTube channel, and he wants other children to see that he's on there. So yeah, just please make sure that you are having these conversations with your children. They know they can come to you if they are going through any emotions. If any children are watching, if you are dreading and scared about going back to school, if someone's saying stuff to you or they're bullying you, please talk to somebody, talk to your teacher. If the teacher's not listening, please talk to a family member, because it's not right. You should not be made to feel that way at all. Sorry.
If Sean makes a YouTube channel, I'm gonna subscribe. By the way, I'll subscribe to his channel.
We will all subscribe. I was going to say, I know what it's like being bullied. So for all of my viewers that are watching that may think, oh, inu ki pata bullying bare, I've gone through bullying. I was bullied throughout my school when I was in primary school. I was bullied through all of my secondary school, and even to the point where, you know, my mom and my mom and my nanny, they didn't understand a word of English. They didn't know how to speak English, and they didn't know what bullying was, what was going on. They were so unknown to it, and it got to a point where, kids were bullying me so much that I would hide behind, in classrooms, behind tables and chairs. And the cleaners would find me, in the school whilst they were cleaning. All the kids had gone home, and I'd still be in the classroom hiding, sitting there and actually praying, Waheguru Satanam, Waheguru Satanam, please, Waheguru, please help me. And I would pray that. And, then the cleaners would find me, they'd find a teacher, usually a head of the department, or, the head of schoolmaster, whoever it was. They would find a teacher and say, we've just found this kid again. We keep finding her in classrooms. It got to a point then they would call my mom from work, not and she wouldn't understand. Then there would be a Punjabi teacher at school that would then talk to her community, your kid's still at school, you need to come pick her up. It kept happening, kept happening. And then it got to a point where the Punjabi teacher then contacted my nanny at home and said, I can't get hold to your mom. So we can't, they said to me, we can't get hold to your mom. We're going to speak to your nanny. And I said to them, I don't want you speaking to my family about it. I was too embarrassed. Being the oldest kid in the house, I was really embarrassed that, they're going to talk to my family about it. What they're going to say. My hair was pulled. I was called all sorts. Even to the point I was called "Et, go home." And comments like that do affect you when you actually grow up. And my nanny then had to go and speak to my mom, and they had to get another family member who knew English, and then had to have a meeting with the headmaster and say, what is going on? Why is our kid being bullied? So I do understand what bullying looks like and how it is, and it can affect you when you're growing up. But bullying doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop when you're just a kid. Bullying, किसी भी पास से हो सकती है. It can happen when you're a kid. It can happen to even adults, even through work. When you're working, it happens there. But one of the things that when I was brought up and I was told, was that bullying happens is because it's not because of you. You're not the person, and you're not the reason why you're being bullied. It's that individual. So my question goes, to you guys in the US. Why do you think there are bullies out there? Is it a problem with themselves? Is it something that they don't like about themselves, or the way they've been brought up? Because it's so easy to point a finger at the bully, but we also don't know. Why have they turned almost to a really nice person to now this extreme bully, and bullying someone
Sure.
to the point
I
where
have,
they want to do something with their life?
yeah, I would say it has to do a lot with insecurities, right? A lot of people bully because they're insecure about what the way they look. They are trying to deflect their own insecurities by focusing on somebody else. This is a couple part answer, or a couple part question. There's so many facets to it. But at the very, very like crux of it, the very beginning would be the environment that these kids are being brought up in. A lot of these kids come from broken houses. Maybe they don't get the type of unconditional love that a lot of other kids get. There could be jealousy, there could be broken houses, they could be divorced parents. It could be for any number of reasons why somebody would act the way that they do. But first and foremost, it could also be what the parents are like in the home. If the parents accept certain ways of speaking and how they conduct themselves around each other, that's what the kids only know. That's what they emulate. So before they even get to school, before they even watch TV, before they even have any social skills, they're learning directly from what their parents are like and what they do. They project what the parents are saying, and it just translates. If you establish that foundation and those values very early on, then it just carries over when they get to the school age. So it ha bullying, the definition of bullying looks very different for some people, but it's a tactic of coercion as well as intimidation. Now, this can be in many different forms. I believe that bullying is a lot more now than before in my parents' time. Back then, it was a lot easier to fight with your fists. Now it's a lot of the emotional aspect, right? If you get your ass kicked when you're younger, they're not going to bully you anymore because you've been able to defend yourself. They're not going to do anything to provoke you again. Now people can hide behind computers, they can hide behind usernames. They don't have to, you don't have to know who's doing it. It's coming from all different, it happens all the time on Instagram. People hide behind different usernames and they they want to provoke you because they know that they're going to get a rise out of you and it gets them pleasure. But in terms of bullying, it looks different for different people. And you alluded to the question of why does it happen? It has to do with the lack of education and the product of the environment that you're brought up in. And so I'm talking more of the primary school kids and middle school. So how you can curve that is educating. So being able to know how to recognize it from the educator's perspective as well as the parents. And there is a generational gap between us that are born in the 90s and the early 2000s than those that are born in the 60s and 70s. The technological aspect of it is has significantly increased exponentially. And so the way that we communicate with each other is very different on how our parents communicate. And there's that language barrier, how you were saying. Um, and so, but I don't know if maybe Jess can uh, maybe elaborate
Yeah, for
and
sure. And you touched on all the main things as well. I think it comes down to the foundation and the parents.
mm,
So, for example, like she was saying, her brother saying, if you get in a fight, or if someone bullies you, make sure you knock them out, right? When I was a
mm,
kid, since I was little, I was taught that. My dad said, "जे लड़ाई हुई, छित्तर ना खा के आई, मार के आई. जे छित्तर खा के आया, करे ना बड़ी."
mm,
So, I was told that, so that was in my back of my head. So my answer to bullying was violence and damage, and that was the only way to get out
mm,
of it because otherwise I would get in trouble at home. And so it's what we tell our kids, what we teach them, what they watch you say to each other, what you say to them. Often, we make fun of our kids or our nephews, and he's be like, "Ha ha, tu mota, tu moti." You know what I mean? We're just joking. We think they're cute, but they take it differently, and then now when they see someone else that's a little bit chubby or a little bit overweight, they're gonna be like, "Ha ha, tu moti," because that's what they saw your dad, that's what they saw their uncle aunts do, and they laughed about it. And everybody likes someone who makes someone laugh. So, they're just trying to be cool or fit in, or someone they look up to at school is a bully. So in order for them to be close to them, they have to be a bully with them, or
mm,
someone's bullied so much that they turn into a bully themselves. And I feel like a lot of the bullies are made by bullies. And I can relate to that because I feel like I was a bully after I was bullied for X amount of time because, I cut my Judah off thinking that I wasn't going to be bullied, but it didn't stop anything. Like, I was still bullied every single day just because I was the only Indian kid or whatever I was, and I didn't speak much English. So it didn't stop anything. It just made it, it just made me feel like I was excusing myself from not being a Sardar and whatnot. Um, but yeah, it just really comes back down to the parents as well. Like if you're sitting down and watching TV with them and you're making comments about what's going on in the TV, technically you're bullying most of the times. You're making these nasty comments. You're like, oh yeah, I don't like her, abakwas, da da da. You're not realizing the kids, they're like sponges. They're soaking up everything you're
mm,
doing around them. So how you act, how you react to things, how you make comments about things really really matter. um,
yeah,
and like everybody's saying, it's just it. And actually, one thing I actually think is it's not an age thing. It's not that they're just bullies as kids or middle schoolers, high schoolers. I mean, you can get bullied or be a bully at 50, 60, or
mhm,
25. You know what I mean? It just, there's always something mentally there going on, whether it's guilt, whether it's desire, whether it's something that makes someone be a bully, or a lack of something. You know what I mean? it, that's the only reason people are bullying, because otherwise, I mean, as humans, we're supposed to just love each other. Our purpose of being a soul, a living soul on this earth, is to spread love. And so if you're not doing that, there's a misconnection there, there's a disconnection with you and yourself, more importantly.
mm,
and that's why you're taking it out on other people, and then laughing at someone's shoes just because they can't afford nice ones, or laughing at someone's shirt, or laughing at someone's size, or their color, their religion, their turban, all these things. The foundation has something to do with inside, something inside them that's going on, that's an issue, whether it was from when they were a little kid, whether something when they were in school, they got something happened, whether it was a trauma they went through, something that happened, and it can happen at any time of the age. I've seen some nice people turn into bullies that were older adults, and then I've seen some really, really mean bullies turn into the nicest people I've ever met now. So it's just that change happens. But
For all of you that are actually watching today's show, I really want you to take away from what's been covered in today's show. Bullying, that person's just bullying. There's something wrong with that person. Like Jesse just said, I want you to take those words away from today's show, that with bullying, about why are we on this earth? We're on this earth because we're human, right? And we're human because we're here to love everyone. And if we can't love anybody, there's a disconnection somewhere. So the bully's there not because they don't they don't like you or anything. They just find you that you're probably an easy target. There's a problem with them, and they've got their own insecurities, and they're struggling to deal with that. And because of that, they're putting it on other people, and ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ behavior, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵਿਵਹਾਰ ਚੰਗਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ because the way that they're feeling, but they don't notice that that's what they're doing. And ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦਾ environment ਖੜਾ ਕਰ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਆ where it's easy to bully anybody. And so I think it's one of the important things that I want everyone to take away, whether you're a kid, whether you're an adult, right? Because bullying happens, and bullying can happen anywhere in the world, and it can happen to anyone at any stage, at any age. What I want you to take away from today's show and today's message is that look after not just yourself, but also the people around you. And if stand up for yourself, learn to love yourself, and learn to love everyone that's around you, whether you are being bullied, whether you are a bully yourself. No one can identify yourself as being a bully. No one can identify themselves as a bully. But in order to make things better, you need to look at your life and how you can actually do that. And even for all the kids that are actually watching, it's not okay to be bullied. If you are being bullied, whether it's online or whether it's in school or anywhere else, please go speak up about it. Whether you're a child, whether you're a grown-up, go talk to someone about it. Get something done about it. Don't just sit there and be the victim and deal with all the issues yourself, because that's not how we deal with life. Life ਵਿੱਚ ਬਥੇਰੇ ਉਤਰਾਅ ਚੜ੍ਹਾਅ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਆ, but the best way to deal with it is to go speak to someone about it. Thank you everyone for joining today's show. ਅਸੀਂ ਅਗਲੇ ਹਫਤੇ ਫੇਰ ਆਵਾਂਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਹੋਰ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ, ਤੇ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਕਰੀ ਜਾਂ ਹੋਰ ਕੋਈ ਟੌਪਿਕ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਵਾਂਗੇ, ਪਰ ਆਪਾਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਅਗਲੇ ਹਫਤੇ ਫੇਰ ਮਿਲਾਂਗੇ. For now, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਤੇ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ.